Before the Arabs came, before the pyramids rose, before the Sahara became an endless sea of sand, a mysterious people lived in North Africa, and their story has been buried under layers of conquest, language, and lies. Their DNA is older than Egypt, older than the desert itself, older than almost any civilization we can name. They survived Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French colonizers. They watched empires rise and fall while their identity refused to die. Today, over 40 million people carry their genes, yet most of them don't even know it. They call themselves Arab, they speak Arabic, they pray in Arabic, but their blood tells a different story. Who are the Berbers really, and why has their true origin been one of the most suppressed mysteries in human history? Walk through the streets of Marrakesh, Algiers, or Tunis and ask people what they are. Most will tell you they're Arab. The governments call them Arab. The media calls them Arab. Even they call themselves Arab. But DNA testing reveals something shocking. The average North African carries less than 15% Arabian Peninsula ancestry. Some carry none at all. So what are they? The answer is Amazigh. It means free people in their own language. You know them by the name outsiders gave them. Berber. A word that comes from barbarian, the Greek and Roman insult for anyone who didn't speak their language. But the Amazigh are not barbarians. They are one of the oldest continuous populations on Earth. Their language, Tamazight, has no relationship to Arabic. It's not Semitic. It's not related to any Middle Eastern tongue. It belongs to its own language family, Afro-Asiatic, but from a branch so ancient that linguists struggle to connect it to anything else. It survived in the mountains, in the desert, passed from mother to child when writing it was illegal, when speaking it could get you imprisoned. And now, in the 21st century, it's experiencing a resurrection. Millions are reclaiming an identity their grandparents were forced to forget. But to understand who the Amazigh really are, we need to go back. Not hundreds of years, not thousands. We need to go back to the Ice Age. In 2018, geneticists published a study that changed everything we thought we knew about North Africa. They had sequenced DNA from ancient human remains found in Morocco and Algeria, skeletons dating back 15,000 to 20,000 years. These were the Iberomaurusians, the first known culture of North Africa. They lived during a time when the Sahara wasn't a desert. It was green. A vast savanna filled with rivers, lakes, hippos, giraffes, and elephants. The Iberomaurusians hunted these animals, built complex burial sites, and created some of Africa's earliest art. But here's what shocked the scientists when they compared Iberomaurusian DNA to modern populations. They found that today's Amazigh people still carry between 30% and 45% of this ancient ancestry. After 20,000 years, after countless invasions and migrations, the genetic signal remained. But the Iberomaurusians themselves were a mystery. Their DNA showed they were partly related to Ice Age Europeans, the same populations that lived in Spain and Italy during the last glacial maximum. But they also carried African lineages that don't exist anywhere else. Ghost populations we can't trace to any living group. They were not simply migrants from Europe or the Middle East. They were something unique, an ancient blend that formed in North Africa and stayed there, isolated by desert and sea. These were Africa's original mountain survivors, and their descendants are still there today. Around 7,000 years ago, everything changed. The Sahara began to die. The seasonal rains that had sustained the green Sahara shifted south. Within just a few centuries, the greatest grassland in human history turned to sand. The people who lived there faced a choice: migrate or perish. Some went south into sub-Saharan Africa. Some went north to the Mediterranean coast. And some stayed, adapting to an increasingly harsh environment, becoming the desert nomads we now call Tuareg. But the drying of the Sahara also opened North Africa to new arrivals. Around 5000 BC, farmers from the Near East, the same populations that brought agriculture to Europe, crossed into North Africa. They brought wheat, barley, sheep, goats, and pottery. They also brought new DNA. These weren't Arabs. Arabs wouldn't exist as a distinct group for another 4,000 years. These were Neolithic farmers from Anatolia and the Levant, the same people who transformed Europe from a land of hunters to a land of farmers. When they mixed with the Iberomaurusians, they created the genetic foundation of the Amazigh people. This is the blend that defines Berber DNA, ancient North African hunter-gatherers plus Neolithic Near Eastern farmers. Not Arab, not sub-Saharan, something entirely distinct that formed before Egypt, before Carthage, before any empire rose in the Mediterranean. Fast forward to the 7th century AD, Arab armies exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula, conquering everything from Persia to Spain in less than 100 years. When they reached North Africa, they encountered the Amazigh kingdoms. The conquest was brutal. The Amazigh queen Kahina led a resistance that lasted decades. When she was finally defeated around 705 AD, the Arabization of North Africa began. But here's what history books get wrong. Arabization wasn't genetic replacement, it was cultural and linguistic conquest. The Arabs who invaded North Africa were a relatively small military and administrative elite. They didn't arrive with massive settler populations, they didn't wipe out the locals, they imposed their language, their religion, and their culture. And over centuries, that culture became so dominant that the Amazigh themselves forgot who they were. Modern genetic studies prove this. Even in populations that identify as Arab, that speak only Arabic, that have no memory of Amazigh identity, the DNA tells the truth. In Morocco, Arabian Peninsula ancestry averages around 10%. In Algeria, 8%. In Tunisia, 12%. Even among the Sahrawi people of the Western Sahara, who are often considered the most Arabized, Arabian ancestry rarely exceeds 15%. The rest? It's the same ancient North African signature that existed before Islam, before Rome, before anyone called this place the Maghreb. Arabization was a triumph of language and religion, but it was not a genetic replacement. The people stayed the same, only the identity changed. But there's another layer to this story, one that explains some of the genetic diversity found in Morocco today and answers a question that has puzzled geneticists for years. Why do some Amazigh groups carry genetic markers typically found in Eastern Europe? Why does Slavic DNA appear in North African populations that never had contact with Slavic lands? The answer lies in the fall of Islamic Spain. For nearly 800 years, the Iberian Peninsula was part of the Islamic world. Al-Andalus, as it was called, was a cosmopolitan civilization where Muslims, Christians, and Jews coexisted, sometimes peacefully, often not. But between 1492 and 1609, Christian kingdoms completed the Reconquista, expelled the Moors, and forced hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Jews to flee. Where did they go? South, across the Strait of Gibraltar, into Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. These refugees weren't just Arabs. They were Andalusis, Iberian Muslims who had lived in Spain for generations. Many had Visigothic, Roman, or Celtic ancestry. They were Spanish Muslims, genetically European, linguistically Arabic, and now homeless. But the waves that fled south also included something most people don't know about: slaves. During the Islamic period in Spain, Arab and Berber rulers imported thousands of slaves from Eastern Europe, particularly from Slavic regions. These slaves, called sakaliba in Arabic, were brought to serve in palaces, armies, and estates. Some rose to positions of power, many converted to Islam, and when Al-Andalus collapsed, their descendants fled south along with everyone else. This explains the presence of Slavic genetic markers in some Moroccan populations. They didn't come from a Slavic invasion, they came from the fall of Islamic Spain. Morocco absorbed not just the Middle East, but Europe itself, layer upon layer, and still remained fundamentally Amazigh at its core. But the European connection to North Africa goes even deeper, and far older than Islamic Spain. In the 5th century AD, as the Roman Empire crumbled, a Germanic tribe called the Vandals did something unprecedented. They crossed from Spain into North Africa and established a kingdom that lasted nearly a century. The Vandal kingdom stretched from Morocco through Algeria to Tunisia, controlling some of the richest lands in the former Roman Empire. They sacked Rome in 455 AD, giving us the word vandalism. They fought wars against Byzantine emperors, and they left their DNA behind. Recent genetic studies have found traces of Indo-European ancestry in North African populations, particularly in Algeria and Tunisia. These aren't Arab markers. They're not Neolithic farmer markers. They're haplogroups associated with Germanic and other Northern European populations. The Vandals didn't just conquer North Africa. They settled there, married into Amazigh tribes, and became part of the genetic mosaic. By the time the Byzantine Empire reconquered North Africa in the 6th century, the Vandals had disappeared as a distinct people. But their genes remained, scattered across the mountains and coasts, another layer in the genetic lasagna that is the Amazigh identity. European barbarians once ruled North Africa, and their DNA proves it. So we've established what the Amazigh are genetically. A blend of ancient Iberomaurusian hunter-gatherers, Neolithic Near Eastern farmers, with traces of Arab, Andalusi, Slavic, and even Germanic ancestry depending on the region. But who are they culturally? Where do they live? And how have they survived when so many ancient peoples vanished? To answer that, we need to go to the mountains. The heart of Amazigh identity today lies in the High Atlas and Anti-Atlas mountains of Morocco, the Kabyle mountains of Algeria, and the Nafusa mountains of Libya. These are not easy places to live. The winters are brutal, the summers are scorching, the terrain is vertical, but that's precisely why Amazigh culture survived. Empires control valleys and coasts, mountains resist. The Romans never fully controlled the Atlas. The Arabs faced decades of rebellion. Even the French struggled to pacify these regions. In places like Tiznit and Amtoudi in southern Morocco, villages cling to cliffsides, accessible only by narrow footpaths. The people there speak Tashelhit, one of the three main Amazigh languages. They farm terraced fields that have been cultivated for over 2,000 years. They build homes from packed earth and stone, using techniques that predate Islam, predate Rome, predate writing. Genetic studies show that populations in these mountain villages carry the highest percentages of Iberomaurusian ancestry, sometimes reaching 50%. They are the closest living relatives to the people who lived here during the Ice Age. Their grandmothers passed down songs in Tamazight that no one can fully translate. Songs so old they might contain words from languages that died millennia ago. Their jewelry is covered in symbols, geometric patterns that anthropologists trace back to Neolithic rock art, triangles for femininity and fertility, circles for protection. The hand of Fatima, which predates Islam and was originally an Amazigh protective symbol adopted into Islamic culture. Water is sacred in these villages, not in an abstract spiritual way, but in a survival way. Ancient irrigation systems called Katara bring water from mountain springs through underground channels, some of them over 1,000 years old. Communities share water according to laws that were old when Rome was young. Betraying the water laws is a worse crime than theft, because in the desert and mountains, water is life, and life is communal. This is the world that shaped Amazigh identity, a world where survival depends on memory, on passing knowledge from generation to generation without writing, without schools, without anything except trust and tradition. And then there are the Tuareg, the Amazigh of the deep Sahara, the blue people, named for the indigo dye that stains their skin. They are the descendants of those who stayed when the Sahara died, who adapted to the harshest environment on earth. They developed a matrilineal society where women own the tents, where men wear veils and women do not, the opposite of Arab custom. Their script, Tifinagh, is one of the oldest writing systems in Africa, older than Arabic, possibly older than Latin. It's a script that survived 2,000 years in the desert, carved into rocks, drawn in sand, passed from mother to daughter because the men were often away with the caravans. Today, Tifinagh is experiencing a revival. It's now an official script in Morocco and Algeria. It's on street signs, government documents, and the Amazigh flag. The Amazigh flag, blue, green, yellow, with a red symbol in the center. Every color has meaning. Blue for the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, the waters that border the Maghreb, green for the Atlas Mountains and the fertile lands, yellow for the Sahara Desert, the challenge and the history. And in the center, the red letter, the Tifinagh symbol for the free man, Amazigh. This flag didn't exist before 1970. It was created by the Amazigh cultural movement, activists who were tired of being erased. Today, millions of people across North Africa identify more with this flag than with the national flags imposed by colonial borders. Waving it can still get you arrested in some countries, but the movement is growing. Social media has allowed young Amazigh people to connect across borders, to share music, language, and history that schools refuse to teach. They are reclaiming what their grandparents were forced to forget. But the Amazigh story isn't just about the last 2,000 years. It goes much, much deeper. Deep in the Sahara, there are secrets that most people will never see. In the Tassili Nadjer Plateau in Algeria, there are over 15,000 rock paintings and carvings, some dating back 12,000 years. They show a world that no longer exists. Giraffes, elephants, hippos, crocodiles. They show people herding cattle, dancing, hunting with bows. They show boats, full-size boats in the middle of what is now the driest place on earth. These aren't myths, they're records. The Sahara was once a paradise, and the people who made this art were the ancestors of the Amazigh. Some of these carvings include what might be the earliest form of writing in Africa. Not Tifinagh, but something older, Proto-Tifinagh, symbols that appear alongside the art. Researchers have found similar symbols across the Sahara, from Libya to Mauritania, suggesting a shared culture, a civilization that stretched across the Green Sahara before the rain stopped. There are also megalithic tombs scattered across Algeria and Morocco, stone structures older than the pyramids. Some are 7,000 years old. They're called Chouché in Arabic, but they predate Arabic, predate Islam, predate everything. Inside them, archaeologists have found pottery, jewelry, and weapons that match nothing else in Africa. These tombs are proof of a complex, organized society that existed in North Africa when Europe was still in the Stone Age. This is what the Arabization myth tried to erase. The idea that North Africa was empty, waiting for Arabs to bring civilization. The truth is the opposite. Civilization was here long before the Arabs, long before the Romans, long before anyone knew what Egypt was. And that civilization's descendants are still here, speaking their language, carrying their DNA, refusing to disappear. But the Amazigh story connects to something even bigger, something that rewrites not just North African history, but the history of humanity itself. In 2017, archaeologists working at Jebel Ir-Houd in Morocco made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific world. They found human skulls, ancient human skulls, and when they dated them, the result was almost unbelievable. 300,000 years old. Before this discovery, the oldest known Homo sapiens fossils were from Ethiopia, dated to around 195,000 years ago. Those skulls were considered the birthplace of our species. But Jebel Ir-Houd changed everything. Homo sapiens didn't originate in East Africa and spread from there. Our species is older, more widespread, and more African than we ever imagined. And the oldest known members of our species were found in Morocco. Think about what this means. The land where the Amazigh people live today is not just old, it's the oldest. It's the landscape where humanity itself became human. The caves, the mountains, the rivers that once flowed through the green Sahara, these are the places where our ancestors looked up at the stars, invented language, created art, and wondered what it meant to be alive. The Amazigh people are not just the descendants of North Africa's ancient inhabitants. They are living on humanity's oldest known homeland. Their DNA carries echoes of the very first modern humans, not metaphorically, literally. Genetic studies suggest that some of the unique lineages found in Amazigh populations, lineages that don't match anything in Europe, Asia, or sub-Saharan Africa, may be remnants of ancient human diversity that survived in North Africa when it disappeared everywhere else. This is why the suppression of Amazigh identity isn't just a political issue, it's a crime against human heritage. When Arabic-only education policies banned Tamazight from schools, when governments jailed people for speaking their mother tongue, when maps were redrawn to erase Amazigh regions, it wasn't just oppression, it was an attempt to delete one of the oldest continuous cultures on the planet. But it failed. The language survived in the mountains, the DNA survived in the blood, the identity survived in the hearts of millions who refused to forget. Today, the Amazigh revival is unstoppable. In 2011, Morocco officially recognized Tamazight as a national language. In 2016, Algeria did the same. Amazigh music, once banned from state radio, now dominates North African pop culture. Amazigh activists sit in parliaments. Amazigh symbols appear on currency. The Tifi Nag script is taught in schools. For the first time in over 1,000 years, children are growing up proud to call themselves Amazigh, not as a protest, not as a rebellion, but simply as the truth. They are the free people. They always were. And no amount of conquest, no empire, no language, and no lie could ever change that. Empires rise and fall. Languages spread and fade. Borders are drawn and redrawn by men who never lived on the land they divided. But an ancient DNA signature continues to pulse inside millions of people today, connecting them to the Ice Age hunters who chased giraffes across a green Sahara, to the farmers who built the first megaliths, to the resistors who fought Rome and Carthage and every empire that tried to erase them. The Amazigh are not a footnote in history. They are one of the world's original peoples, older than Arabs, older than Europeans, older than almost anyone else we can name. And their story is not over. Deep in the Sahara, in caves not yet explored, in tombs not yet opened, there are discoveries waiting that could rewrite everything we think we know. If you found this journey into one of humanity's oldest mysteries fascinating, share this video with anyone curious about hidden histories and ancestral truths. Have you taken a DNA test and discovered unexpected North African ancestry? Do you have family stories that don't match the official narrative? Leave your story in the comments. Every one of us carries history in our genes, and sometimes the most important stories are the ones that were never written down. They were carried in blood, in language, in memory, waiting for the right moment to be told. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.